boys like to shake, rattle, and troll.
It's time for the award-winning Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Yeah, kiss the one that body, grab your favorite homes, me and the boys gonna shake.
A show for the serious fishermen as well as the novice looking for tips from the pros. Shake, Rattle, and Troll, brought to you by Bill Luke Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram. I-17 and Camelback Road since 1927.
Yeah, we got the power, we got the speed, we're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Fresh water, salt water, watch out, boys. Fast Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. It's me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and...
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm Don McDowell. Welcome to Shake, Rattle, and Troll today. Hope you're all having a good day and looking out for the Chubasco that's blowing through here. JK.
Good morning,
Welcome.
You welcome back.
Yeah, you know, it's always good going, but it's good coming home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, coming back last night, it looked like we were driving into the perfect storm after 3 days in San Diego where the weather is always nice.
Absolutely.
We have a special guest, Mr. Ken Bennett, our Secretary of State for our great state of Arizona, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come hang out with us on Sunday morning.
Good to be here, Don. Thank you.
We don't want to talk about politics. All I want to talk about is fishing.
Okay.
You know,
Watch.
Worms in a bobber. Yep. Here we go. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. Just give you a quick update. The fish bite over off the left coast is just absolutely crazy. Then we'll talk about as we go through. We talked a little bit about the wolf issue over the past few months, so we've got an update on that, and talk about some other things and see how we can support Mr. Bennett here for governor.
I like that thought.
Thanks, John.
That's it. I need a bumper sticker.
Everybody
have bumper stickers.
I got them in the car.
Okay. Well, I had some time with Mr. Bennett over at a Patriot event. We had a nice chat, and you've got some good things in store for Arizona. I'm going to kind of let you take the lead on this. If you were governor, what's the first thing you're going to do?
First thing I'm going to do is build the relationship with the legislators that will be elected in November so that we can get some things done in the legislature. I ask people to think about two words when they think about Ken Bennett, and that is that experience matters. And we're going to move to deal with the border issues. We're going to move to improve our education system. We're going to begin working on how to get our economy going and get people back into jobs so that they can pay for their health care instead of access and all that,
Yeah, that's all important stuff. You happen to be sitting in a room with a couple guys that are fighting government overreach from the federal side and other outside, let's say, government-subsidized agencies such as Salt River Project, telling us what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what we're going to have in the landscape, these kinds of things. And I would like to spend a little bit of time on that to see what you can do, what we can do. We're on the ground. We're walking point for Arizona with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, trying to hold the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Forest Service at bay, doing some of the things that they're doing. They're just trashing the state. Mm-hmm. And
I think that's our biggest concern is that the reach from the federal level, trying to control states, what I consider to be states' way of living and their determination of their own welfare.
It's states' rights.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big supporter of states' rights, and as a governor, I will push back against federal overreach, and that can go in a lot of different directions. As Secretary of State, I don't have much authority over resources and that, but I am the chief elections official. So, for example, when the voters of Arizona 10 years ago voted to require that you have to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote, I and the Attorney General are the ones that defended that law that all the way up to the Supreme Court. And we got the Supreme Court ruling saying that, yes, Arizona, you do have the authority to control who gets registered to vote in your state, but we want you to go over to the Federal Election Assistance Commission one more time, ask them if they will voluntarily do what you want them to do. Unfortunately, they said no. So, and now we have appealed that back through the 10th Circuit, and we'll be back at the Supreme Court level in several more months, and we will. So however we have to push back against the federal government, I'm willing to do it because I've proven that within the realm of my responsibilities as Secretary of State, we've done that already, and we'll do it in the future.
What's your opinion of the governor of Texas putting National Guard on the border?
I support that. When I was Senate President, we passed a bill that had $160 million of resources, $50 million for high-tech border detection, $55 million to local law enforcement, sheriffs and local law enforcement along the border, authority to put the National Guard down on the border. I think we have to realize, though, that I don't think securing the border is one thing.
No, it's not.
I'm already working with law enforcement, former military and former Border Patrol experts, who have recommended what I think is one of the main things that the state could do, and that is a task force under the direction of DPS to go after the cartel activities, the drug smuggling, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking. And those are violations of state law that the state can take the lead on and have no question as to whether the feds try to, override us or whatever. You get into the National Guard area, you got to be very careful, because if you start doing things that
it's federal monies
that goes beyond a line that they will draw,
and they draw that line very well.
Yeah, they draw that
line.
Then they take over the Guard. That's why it's called the National Guard.
Well,
so we got to be very careful that we don't think that. One of my opponents, who I respect, said we'll just send 1,200 National Guard down there and that'll be it. No,
no, we already did that, and they became administrators, keeping paperwork and this, that, and the other thing for the Border Patrol, which I don't have an opinion on that one way or another. That's positive.
It's my understanding that the situation in Texas became such that the feds had to admit that they had so many Border Patrol agents watching all the kids that they didn't have enough Border Patrol agents to do the Border Patrol jobs. And so when Perry says, we'll send the National Guard down to augment that, they couldn't complain. And so they're kind of in concert with that decision. But you got to be careful that in Arizona, whatever we decide to do, and I'm very willing to send the National Guard down there, but they can't directly interdict. And
no.
Yeah, and you got to be very careful. So we got to be tough on the border, but we got to be smart. I think one of the things we've got to do is push to reduce or eliminate the welfare state that is drawing so many people up here. My daughter works in a hospital, and she sees.
That's one of the biggest areas is the hospital sees it. Yeah.
Well, a couple of the ER rooms that I happen to be familiar with, now you can make an appointment if you have an issue, and they'll tell you, no, you got a 2-hour wait. So, be here at 8 o'clock to get a hook out of your thumb instead of sitting there for 4 hours.
Right. But, I have story after story that she shared with me that, illegals in our country are, coming in.
Rampant.
They're demanding everything for free. And, if you're in our country illegally, you should not be benefiting from
shame on
public resources.
No, we have rules.
Unfortunately, though, the system is set up now that people understand. It's the unwritten rules that they understand, and that's part of it. Is that word of mouth conveys reality versus what is written, and the reality is you can get this, and this. If you're in another country and you don't have the services that are necessary, why not flood the border to get the services that you need? Yeah. If nobody's enforcing any rules and regulations, there's not. Then do it. I would.
In a heartbeat.
Yep. Well, I had a surgeon who's supporting me up in the Prescott area who told me that about 4 months after having done a surgery on a guy that turned out to be illegal, he ends up with a patient about 4 or 5 months later, and he says, "Well, how did you hear about me?" "Oh, I was living south of the border and heard through my cousin Jose what a great job you did on his heart surgery, and I'm here for mine."
And how are we paying for this?
Yes.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
By the way, how do you like Prescott?
I love Prescott. I grew up there. I was actually born in Tucson when my parents...
Yeah, I saw that. You were born in Tucson, moved to Prescott, and you've been in the oil business.
Well, I was. My grandparents on my mom's side go way back in Prescott. Their phone number was 49.
Wow.
Oh, that's funny. 49.
49. The gas station was 71, and the house on Pleasant Street was 49. Over the years, the phone companies kept adding digits to it. Now it's 928-445-2949. But that 49 was from way back in the 20s or 30s. Great-grandparents who started with a dairy up in the Prescott area. I'm fifth-generation Arizonan.
Nice.
My great-grandparents had a hay and feed store and mercantile store in Douglas. Next generation made its way up to Gilbert, where we were dairy farmers. Next generation found its way to Prescott. That's the family I was talking about. My grandparents had two little businesses. One was gas stations selling gas and diesel, and the other was the Wholesome Bread distributorship.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, that's amazing. Mom was born in Prescott. I was born in Tucson when my parents were at the U of A. We were supposed to be cotton farmers, and Dad was assistant manager or something of a cotton farm south of Tucson. They were visiting in Prescott. Christmas morning, 62, he got a call from the owner of the farm who said that his son wanted the job that my dad had. So we went from being farmers to Mom and Dad bought the gas station business from my grandparents, and I've been in Prescott all my life.
That's an outstanding story. I didn't know any of that, JK.
Uh-huh.
All right, hey, we're going to stand down. Thanks to our sponsors, including Bill Luke Chrysler Jeep and Dodge. It's been in the community for over 88 years. I-17 West Camelback Road. Check them out. We'll be right back.
Gonna rock the boat. Gonna slam a jam with a brand new note. Banging my head.
All right, we're back visiting with our current Secretary of State running for Governor, Ken Bennett. Great story about Arizona.
Well, just long time, as I said, fifth generation on my mom's side. I think it's fourth generation on my dad's, and my great-grandfather on my dad's side was the first mayor of Glendale, 1911.
Oh, my gosh.
So
he was hanging out with the Tom McChoffs, Trigger Boffs.
You betcha.
I
think he got to be mayor because they had one of the few water wells in town, and he probably, shared enough water with people that they made him the mayor.
Anytime people need water, they congregate around water back in those days.
Oh, yeah. We still do.
Yeah, the water cooler, in the office.
Yeah, okay.
Big difference.
Aside from the border issue, you'd mentioned education. What do you have in mind to turn that around?
Well, I would do what I saw in a school in Tucson not long ago, C.E. Rose Elementary School. Very poor part of Tucson. And generally speaking, though, what we got to do is we got to get more resources in the classroom, less in administration, and help the teachers and give them the salaries and the assistance that they need to help the students. Back to C.E. Rose Elementary. Visited there several months ago. New principal showed up about 5-6 years ago. Steve Trejo is his name. And he looks at the numbers and realizes that only about 20% of the students in the school can read and write at grade level.
Ooh,
20%.
Wow.
Well, that's scary, but Quality Counts that does most of the stats for the whole country and reports where the states are compared to each other. As a whole, they report that Arizona's only at 26%.
As a whole
of our fourth graders read and write at fourth grade level. And that's not too far behind the national average, which is 34%. So
staggering numbers.
As a country, barely one out of 3 fourth graders can read and write at grade level. And as a state, we're maybe a little bit better than 1 out of 4. So Steve looks at 20% in his new school and says that's not acceptable. And I said, well, what is it today, Steve? He says, we're at 75%.
Really?
And I said, how'd you get there? He said, well, we started by talking to the students and telling them that they were the person who was most responsible for their own education. It wasn't your parents. It wasn't your teacher. It wasn't me, the principal. You are the most responsible person for your own education. Secondly, we changed the culture. We started talking about high expectations. You kids can go to college. You can do whatever you want. And then third, he said we got resources into the classroom. I think they bumped the teacher salaries, but what he focused on was they got teacher assistants into the classroom to help the teachers, so that if a teacher had 25 or 30 kids and 5 or 6 were falling behind for whatever reason, there was somebody there that they could turn them over to and kind of catch them back up. And in 5 years, they've gone from 20% reading and writing at grade level to almost 7 years. Seven to almost 75. That is. We need to replicate that model all over the state. Now we already have some very good schools in Arizona. 3 of the top 10 high schools in the country are in Arizona, and the number 11. So 4 out of the top 11 high schools are in Arizona. But we also must have some pretty low performing ones, because
if our average is that bad and we have 4 out of the top 11.
So to me, the focus is go after the lowest performing, identify and go after the lowest performing schools in the state, and just try to get them from those 20s to up in the 50s or 60s. Or if we could convert or transform our lowest performing schools using a model like they did at C.E. Rose Elementary, just up to the average. If we can get all of our 15 and 20s up to 40 or 50, we would go, our current ranking, if you want to call it that, as far as student performance, Arizona is 38 out of the 50 states.
Right, man.
Now, so we're bottom third, but if we can get our 15 and 20% performing schools up to 50 or 60, or maybe even like Steve did with C.E. Rose, 75.
How long did it take him to turn that around?
About 5 years.
5 years, okay.
My goal is in the first term of being governor, I want to get us from 38th to top 5 in the country. And we can do it by going after targeting the lowest performing schools.
It drags your average down. Plus, I think that's a good assessment.
Well, I found out in business that a lot of times it's easy to tinker around the edges of the things that you're already doing good.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a comfort zone.
Yeah. I ran a family business, and we did some things very well, and it was always nice to try to take something that you were performing at 95% and try to make it 96 or 7. But that didn't transform the company. What really transforms a company or an organization is looking at your weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And converting your weaknesses into strengths. Find something that you only do 30% well. You turn that into a 70 or 80%, and you change the bottom line immensely.
True. Very true. Got to get in the trench.
How about, what's your experience with wildlife and the game and fish department and those types of things in Arizona?
As a boy, I went hunting with my dad and grandparents a lot. As I got older and married, my wife was not to her, camping is
back of the Hilton.
No, camping was the Hilton instead of the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
So
nice. I like that.
I've done. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I spent a lot of time in the wild as a boy, and then as my sons were teenagers, and both of them are Eagle Scouts, and I was a Scoutmaster, and so most of mine has been being in the wild, but not being a full-fledged hunter per se, because I just, I didn't get into that as an adult, but I spent a lot of time. I've got a great story of an uncle who wrestled a deer by the antlers one time, and a couple other. It's
the fun stories.
The fun stories.
Yeah, boy.
And I remember being out, deer hunting with grandpa, and dad. And
so that was a way of life back then, though.
Yeah,
absolutely it was.
Yeah.
That was food on the table, and you didn't screw around with it.
Yeah.
Now we have options.
Yeah.
If I don't get that bull this fall, I still go to the market.
Yeah.
I still have my meat.
Or New Mexico.
Good point.
Colorado.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of good, very close friends that are avid hunters, and I love going out with any of them, but it's just, I got busy running the family business and then doing my public service stuff, city council up in Prescott and state board of education and the legislature and now Secretary of State. So
you've been a busy guy.
I've been pretty busy. And
for what it's worth to you, I think you've done a great job for us, and we look forward to seeing you re-engage as governor.
We need a governor from rural Arizona.
We do. Amen.
Yep.
What's your plan? And I know it's a broad stroke question on this government overreach issue. From where we're sitting and dealing with the Fish and Wildlife, the Forest Service, and on and on and on, clear up the hill. It's bad here. We're not being able to make decisions for Arizona. John is one of our leading experts on the wolf issue. Rural America is having wolves shoved down our throats, literally.
Yeah.
And there's a war coming. And I think this...
the latest revision, the DEIS...
When did that come out?
Friday.
Friday?
Yeah. Friday, the DEIS from Fish and Wildlife came out. And basically it said that...
Is that the scientific committee type thing?
No, that is the draft environmental impact statement. And their plan, we have 60 days to respond, and there's going to be a meeting up in Honda on August the 11th. But we have 60 days to respond, and their plan is to open up the state. And it was interesting because they have the corridor of I-40. There's nothing north of I-40 yet, but everything south of I-40, including you could possibly see wolves in Phoenix, Scottsdale for sure,
and
any of the rural.
Tucson.
Oh yeah, all the way down
to the border.
Yeah, and they want it to go all the way as far west as Kingman. That's the release zones that they're approving at this time.
Wow!
So all across the plateau, all across the state. And the interesting thing was, number one, they did not generate any numbers as to how many wolves they're looking at. Now, we know the scientific community that you and I discussed, we're looking at 750 to 1,000 wolves.
That's unacceptable number.
Well,
that's tenfold of what we're at about now, right?
Well, here's the deal, Ken. If you spend a little bit of time and look at the Yellowstone model that was such a failure, the same thing is going to happen here. Especially, we've got a pristine elk herd up in the Kaibab Plateau. Those wolves get up there, that elk herd's done inside 2 years. It's over. We've always had the Kaibab.
Well, we can't let that happen. Arizona's got to control its own destiny, and that includes our lands and our wildlife and all of that. We've got to invite and then demand the federal government to give us more control.
All righty, having said that, I'm going to stand down, do a little bit more business for our sponsors. I'm Don McDowell with
JK.
Ken Bennett.
We'll be right back.
I ain't got time for you. I felt the rush of the Rio Grande into Yellowstone, and I've seen firsthand Niagara Falls.
All righty, we're back. A couple things I want to get out on the table. And forgive me if I'm starting to sound redundant. This government overreach thing is just absolutely driving me absolutely nuts. I have to admit that I don't have the patience to do what you do. When we're dealing with the government, especially on a federal level, even state level, and I'm not going to name names, but it seems like we go into slow motion. We pitch logic right out the window.
Mm-hmm.
We do public comment period. John's been talking to you about the wolf issue. That started in 1995. We've been doing public comments for
ever.
Forever.
I was a young man when that started.
and look what happened.
You're still looking pretty good, John.
Yeah. So here's my point. How do we speed the process, the political process up? The thing that I find most aggravating is, let's say, working with the Game and Fish Department. They've got so many agencies that they have to play nice with that don't have. Let me pick one to make my point. Southwest Bald Eagle Management Committee. Okay, we're trying to get the eagle closure lifted off of the lower Agua Fria river arm. The eagles haven't fledged for 4 years now. There's a 6.1 mile closure from
on a whole lake, 6 miles of river.
Wow.
To June, and we can't go there. Now, we have asked why, and we have, if I'm going to complain about a problem, I'm going to bring you a solution.
Right.
You have to have some input. So we sit down, we study the problem. We've offered, okay, it's a canyon, river arm. You don't need to be blowing through there at 60, 80, 100 miles an hour. And we all agree on sustainable habitat for the birds. They're delisted. There are 21 different agencies controlling that little piece of river. Now, Game and Fish is the chairman of the committee. You've got Maricopa County Parks,
SRP,
the National Guard, Luke Air Force Base, and the thing that really starts frying the taters here is White Mountain Apache Indian Reservation, the Gila River guys, and a whole bunch of people that don't have any skin in the game in Maricopa County, on that lake, in the populace or the economic footprint. Stay out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's deal with it here. So, we've been through the process. Now they shot it down. They didn't say yes, they didn't say no, but we don't know what they said. And we're not going to really know that until the next meeting in January after they close the river again in December. It's like, really?
Well, I think at the beginning there, how do we get things to, how do we speed the processes up?
That's the question. How do you infuse logic, speed the process up? And we don't live in a sandbox. We just don't. We've got some economic struggles. We've got social struggles at every turn point, and we all have to play nice.
Well, and I think the answer is leadership. And we were talking during the break that, for example, when you've sat in a legislator's desk for 8 years like I did, you learn how does the budget work? Where does the money go? And then for 4 years I was Senate president. And I was talking about how, for example, I've touched tens of thousands of people over the last 6 years as secretary and those 8 years as senator. I explained the state budget using Kleenex boxes. And there's probably tens of thousands of people who, when you say Ken Bennett, Secretary of State, he was the Senate president, when you tell him he's the guy that explains the budget with the Kleenex boxes, oh yeah, I saw that.
Got it.
And it's great. So when I say leadership, you've got to have people who understand all of the details, but then can talk to the public who are, most of us, we're busy living our lives. We don't have time to understand all the details. We need leaders who understand the details, but then can communicate with us in a way that it doesn't take us 2 years to make a decision. If you can understand the state budget in a 30-minute presentation, and then you can see, we can't take too much from there to put over here or vice versa. And so I think it comes down to leadership. And the other thing I would say is building relationships. I think influence comes from building relationships. And when you have leadership that understands the details but can communicate to the general public in ways that they can understand and then builds relationships with people, then I think you get things done.
How does the state of Arizona stand up and tell the feds no? I mean, it's real simple. I mean,
sometimes you file a lawsuit like I had to do with the Secretary of State of Kansas, who had a similar law like we did. I was explaining a few minutes ago about, you have to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. They have the same law in Kansas.
That is such a common sense issue. It's like, what?
Yeah, you would think. So sometimes it's a lawsuit. Sometimes it's, we may have to go to the point of kind of cutting off some of the money that we send to Washington in order to try to get some of it back.
They always figure that they got the bigger hammer, though.
Well, and I think we have to remember that the people created the federal government. The federal government did not create themselves. And in a lot of our...
maybe in the beginning, but I'm going to...
Well, a lot of people will say, for example, the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. And I have said that...
I get that.
A lot of times. So, but... the Constitution doesn't start with we, the states. It says we, the people.
Yeah.
So we created the federal government, and I think it's gotten way more powerful and bigger and intrusive into all kinds of things, and we have to push back. Some of that's going to be in the courts. Some of it's going to be cutting off some of the money supply that goes back there. I think a lot of it's going to be building better relationships. I think some of it's going to be taking care of our lands so that we can then demand that the federal government turn over more land to state control here in Arizona. If you look at a map of the U.S. from about north and draw a line between North Dakota and Texas, most of the states Midwest and East are mostly privately held land.
Absolutely.
Out in the West,
public.
It's reverse.
Well, we're about to have that north-south corridor that's coming. We're about to have toll roads that are coming. And, I've seen the petitions, and we've had interviews with the opposition, basically opposed to toll roads. But it looks like it doesn't matter what the people say, they do it anyway. It's like the wolf issue.
Yeah, the documentation on. By the way, that report's 460 pages long. The DEIS, and I
hope you've read every page because I haven't.
Oh, he will. Trust me.
Eventually, I will have read every page. I guarantee you that.
Good.
The issue, though, that we see is that they present all of this information to you, and it's such. It's like a monolith.
Mm-hmm.
You try and move a monolith, and it's almost impossible. You want to take a chunk at a chunk and a chunk at it, little bits and big pieces at a time. Eventually, you get to the end. But my God, you turn around and you look at it. You've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that the process, the length of the process, I think a lot of people are more frustrated because in a real world, business world that he and I are both in.
Uh-huh.
As you did as a family business.
Oh, yeah, I've been in business for 30 years.
If you don't make a decision and if you don't move, you're left behind in the dust. If you run a deficit operation on your business, you won't be around long.
Not making a decision is making a decision, and it's usually a fatal one.
Yeah, I don't think there's two guys sitting in this room that I don't think are going to live long enough, unfortunately, to see the wolf issue come to closure.
Maybe 3. Your brother's still here.
Nah.
Nah.
He may be part of the problem. Let's just say.
The family tree is very strange in this room.
Oh, I see.
Wow. Ken, how do we get involved other than supporting you? I've asked this question, and so far I think I'm on nine organizations and boards of directors and thises and that's, and it just takes a lot of time.
Well, let me give you a much faster way. One, do something for your state legislators. Every one of us lives in a legislative district in Arizona. And you have 1 state senator and 2 state representatives. If you just, every 2 years when they're running for election, they have to collect some signatures to get their name on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they have to collect a little money, but some of them collect those $5 things for the Clean Elections program like I am doing for the governor's race. But about every 2 years, there's a window of about 4 or 5 months. And if you collect 1 or 2 pages, 10 or 20 signatures for your state legislator and hand it to them personally, they will know your name. They will they'll give you their cell phone. They will take your call at 11 p.m. at night. It is amazing what few things a average citizen can do, an individual can do, and it's back to that second thing I was just mentioning, building a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You got to build a relationship with your legislators. John, you were just talking about, how you kind of come to know Matt Salmon over the last year or two.
Same thing.
Is building relationships with your elected leaders, and then you don't have. You may still want to be on 6 or 10, boards trying to work on this or that. But when a critical bill comes up in the legislature and you want your voice heard by your legislator, they'll take your call. If you collect them about 10 signatures.
We're going to stand down, take a break, hold that thought more on that. I want to talk about veterans when we come back. We have one soldier to honor on roll call for July 27th. We'll do that when we come back. I'm Don McDowell.
Ken Bennett.
The voice of moderation and reason. Special K.
You're doing well. We'll be back.
Mighty neighborly. Mighty neighborly. We used a lot of our backs and a little of our brains. We jacked up the jacks and snugged up the chains. We all did our very best to refrain from shoveling. We put what timber we had underneath.
Well, I see the music's changing. The mood's kind of toning down just a little bit.
And I'm just starting to ramp up.
Yeah, that's Jennifer's way of, keeping control here. We'd mentioned just a little bit about the veterans situation here. I'm going to say in Arizona, but it's a national
thing. Yeah,
certainly a national issue. What would you suggest in helping to ramp up support of our veterans? We're losing an awful lot of veterans. It's tragic.
Mm-hmm.
We have, off air I was talking to you about Vern Bagley. Vern's not going to join us this morning. They've got landline problems as the storm blew there through Montezuma yesterday. But, Vern's pretty typical. Served the country, Vietnam, came out as a lieutenant of some sort. And since then, he's been really fighting a fight. And knowing Vern like I do, it seems to me like the VA were trying to kill him, literally. Well, you're having a heart attack. You got to wait your 30 days to go and see the heart doctor.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Take an aspirin, you'll feel better.
Well, I support the idea that I think is starting to get some legs in D.C., and that is that there needs to be a backup system so that if you have any wait time or problems going through the VA system, I think you should have the ability to go outside to a private doctor and
send the bill to the federal government.
Hello.
Yeah.
And the problem is?
The system's not designed for that, unfortunately, and it's like anything else. If you have no controls in place, then the sad part is that the VA should have been growing along with the influx of people that are coming into the system now, and they weren't. And all their budgetary requirements were set up for what was, not what is.
Well, we're seeing case after case after case of neglect, sheer neglect, and there's people down there getting bonuses and this and that. Is there going to be any prosecution over any of this?
That's all at the federal level, and so let's get Matt Salmon and Paul Gosar and all those guys in here and talk about stuff like that, Jeff Flake. But what can we do as a state? I want to make Arizona the most veteran-friendly state in the country. When I was Senate President, we passed legislation to exempt salaries for active duty military and National Guard from having to pay any income tax. We got the Southern Arizona Veterans Home funded. It was constructed a few years later and down in Tucson. We passed legislation and provided funding to help protect our military bases and things like that. So I'm a huge fan of veterans, and I'm happy to say that veterans are a huge fan back to me. I've been endorsed by Joey Strickland, who was the former director of Department of Veteran Services. Had a lot of positive input and feedback from veterans over our office taking the lead to get that new World War II memorial constructed down at Wesley Bowling Plaza with the big gun barrels from the Arizona and the Missouri.
USSR.
Yeah. Fabulous. You got to go down there. If you haven't been to the Capitol in a few years, it's worth going down to see that new World War II memorial. So we're going to my goal is to make Arizona the most veteran-friendly, and not just friendly, but supportive. We're not going to leave people behind and let them get lost in the shuffle. And the state Veteran Services Department will step in when a VA hospital or the VA system is failing them. And we'll make sure that we're doing everything we can to get people the services that they earned and deserve.
You're taking on quite a task, and it's nothing short term. How long will it take to implement something along those lines? A year, 2 years?
Well, I think we can start making some changes in a matter of months.
Good.
But you have to be persistent and make sure that it's working. Sometimes I think government is so afraid to make a mistake that it takes them, as you were talking a few minutes ago, well, we got to study something for 2, 3, 4 years before we take action because we don't want to. What I learned in business was you got to make quick decisions, and you implement a solution and you put in place a way to see if that solution is working to get you the results that you want. And if it is, great. If it isn't, you make another decision and change course a little bit and do something better. And so I think we can do things much faster than years and years and years. Well, we can get things done in a few months and then see if that's working better. And if it is, great. How can we make it even more better? But if it's not working, if that first solution isn't working, you haven't spent 2 or 3 years, studying it to death before you tried to do something that ended up not working at all. So we've got to make quicker decisions, and I think that comes back to that leadership that I was talking about earlier. Experience matters.
It has to be. Oh, absolutely. And you started, if I'm not mistaken, about 1984, 85?
In 85, I ran for the Prescott City Council. Met my wife at ASU. We had one child. We both graduated, moved back to Prescott so I could work in the family business. And I'd watched my parents be active in the community, and so I thought, well, I'll give back a little bit, and I ran for the city council. I think I got elected on my parents' and grandparents' good name and served on the city council. And I learned, a lot of people in Prescott, when they say, what do you remember about Ken Bennett on the Prescott City Council? Oh, they'll say the parking lot on Union Street. Because
nice.
There was a big issue in town that year about we didn't have enough downtown parking. And one of the streets that kind of fed into the local square there was this beautiful wide old street called Union Street. And it could have had 6 lanes, but it only had 2, and there was no parking. And I thought, if we just put some parking up here and some diagonal thises and a couple lanes, one lane going this, all of a sudden we added 50 or 75 parking spaces to the downtown by just restriping one little road. Now,
Ken, it's called logic.
It's logic.
They can't do that today.
Well, no, we can get back to that. We can get back to it.
That's good stuff.
Well, now years later they built a $10 million parking garage structure, near the downtown Prescott area, but we solved the downtown
and created a traffic jam getting into. Okay,
but we solved the parking issue for a couple of years by just using a little logic on how we striped the streets.
If you look at it though, you had an idea, and it didn't take forever to implement the idea.
Yeah,
you saw it, you got together with those people concerned with it. It was an issue, you recognized it, you did it, and you got it handled.
Right.
That's what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So. Interlopers at all times in this studio.
Our friend, Brother Bill Ruley, is in the house.
Morning.
What are you doing, brother?
Working.
Okay.
AC unit's down somewhere.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, this is the man right here. You have a friend in the business.
All righty.
Now.
Good.
Yeah. And a vote.
I will tell you this, though. I appreciate the way that you and I and Don and most of us see the logic of you gain acceptance through education and through unification of a process. You identify an area of need and you address it. And you don't dicker around with it forever. You get it handled. Get it handled done now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if you have those relationships, you can get a decision made, implement it, and see if it's working. If it does, great. If not, change course. And we do that in our personal lives and in our businesses. So that's the aspect of business that I think can be brought over to, government.
I may try some government policy next time I'm asked to take the trash out. I'm going to have to do a study.
Okay.
I'll get back to you on that.
Let's see how your wife thinks.
I don't think that's going to fly.
Right now we're going to do roll call for July 27th, and the demise of this soldier certainly isn't clear. Army Private First Class Donald A. Hamilton Jr. died July 24, 2014, serving during Operation Enduring Freedom. 20 years old, out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 5th Cavalry Regiment, 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 1st Cavalry Division out of Fort Hood, Texas. He died at Brooks Army Medical Center, Joint Base, San Antonio, Texas, of an undisclosed illness sustained in Ghazni Province, Afghanistan. Whatever the case was, certainly a loss and another price of our freedom. It's not free. Think about that. Our hearts and prayers go out to him, his family, and the units that he served with. I'm Don McDowell. We'll be back.
Many men have gone.
Don's gonna make some noise. Me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and
now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
We are back. Welcome to the second hour of Shake, Rattle, and Troll. And joining us, our very, very special guest running for the next governor of our great state in Arizona, going to make it a little bit better place, is Secretary of State Ken Bennett. And JK's here with a lot of moderation and reason today, and thank you for that.
You're always welcome.
I like that moniker JK because my wife is Jean and I'm Ken, so JK is a phrase that I use a bit.
Oh, see?
After we get off
Gene
here,
and Ken.
we're going to give you what that stands for.
It means just kidding.
Yeah, really. Let me give you an update on what's happening over on the left coast. The half and three-quarter day boats. Let's start off with the three-quarter day. They had 4 boats out, 67 anglers. It was a pretty good day yesterday. 43 yellowfin tuna, 130 yellowtail, 19 bonita, and then a few calico bass. The Sea Adventure 80, and I'm going to highly recommend going out with Captain Scott McDaniels. Yesterday was my 826th day fishing on the left coast, minus 6 days at Cape Hatteras over on the other coast. The Sea Adventure 80, very, 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 very nice, well-behaved boat, 80 feet long, 25 feet at the beam, built with 1988. Clean. The boat's absolutely spotless till we got on
I'm
board.
jealous. The pictures are awesome.
I haven't seen any of them yet, but we had 31 anglers on board. Now, we had, Pat, how many guys went from Arizona? 14? About 14. Jimmy Dwight, his son, brother, family, friends. I had the pleasure of my brother and my son building some memories, seeing them both just bent over the rails, squealing was great. And 31 anglers boated 210 yellowfin tuna, 3 Dorados, and 140 yellowtail. And I don't know how many fish we lost in the tangles.
You mentioned you lost some bluefin.
I lost probably, I know one big bluefin, at least 2 yellowfin. And then I got one hung up in a yellowtail hung up in a patty, and you'll love this. We're out there flipping patties with swim baits. It was great.
In the ocean.
Yeah, it was good. And when we talked to Ken, you need to know this guy up in Payson, James Guggenauer, very engaged in the community. We're working on a number of things on Roosevelt Lake and the Salt River Lake chains, but Jim,
give me his number. I'll call him personally and make sure that.
You're going to hear. He'll be on.
We're going to talk to him at 8:30.
Okay,
absolutely. And
great gentleman from Payson, and certainly has the pulse of what goes on up there, both politically as well as for wildlife and for fishing. And he makes a hell of a good fishing rod.
I tell you what, James handed me a 7-foot medium action light tip baitcaster bass rod. And he said, go try it. I go, James, we're going to be on yellowtail. He goes, well, if you break it, we'll build you another one. And yesterday we started going by the patties. You know what that's like. And hung a swim bait on there and went to whacking yellowtail. I didn't know what to expect with this rod. But I said, you know what? Here's a 15-pound yellowtail. And I, took up the slack and pulled back on it. And the parabolic curve on that thing was absolutely perfect. Had a little bit of the tip, about maybe 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet of the tip on a 7-foot rod. The rest of it was all backbone. They came to the boat. Whole bunch of them came to the boat. Pat had a taste of it. And these guys are looking at us like we're, huh? I was using a 20-pound test on 1 ounce triangular jig heads with the 3D eyes, 5.5-inch replaceable body, and the anchovy pattern. It was good. It was just a hell of a rod. So, anyway,
that's Guggenauer? Guggenauer?
James Guggenauer.
All right. Okay.
Yep, he's a great guy up there. I would invite you to, Monday evening. We'll be at the Tonto Basin Chamber of Commerce for a Healer County.
If you can fly your helicopter over, that'd be a great place for you to drive down. Pumpkin Center.
Yeah, I'll meet you here. We can ride over in the truck. It's good stuff. No, we're heavily engaged in some conservation efforts over there, and at Roosevelt Lake and some downstream into Apache Canyon and swore on a gizzard shad issue, which I don't want to get too deep into that today, but
we'll discuss that with you at some point down.
All right.
Yeah, boy, it's another battle coming. But anyway, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Schools, education, certainly paramount. We've talked a little bit about the border issue, and I don't see that being fixed anytime soon. Again, too much federal stuff, in my opinion. It needs to be states' control. And
the group I'm working with on the task force under the direction of DPS are guys that have controlled international borders when they were in the military. Nice. One was number 2, who controlled the Laos-Cambodia border, and they controlled it by doing some of the things that they've recommended that we're putting in this task force. And it's going after the cartel activity, the drug smugglers, the human smuggling, and that. Those are state laws that the state can be directly interdicting. Well, and when you're going after those things, then when you do find folks that are crossing illegally and you're asking them, do you have drugs, and you're investigating from the aspects of the state laws that we do have authority over, then if we discover that they're simply just crossing illegally, you can
funnel them that one way or another.
You can still take them into custody and funnel them back over to Border Patrol.
Right.
So,
is this going to be another Arpaio case of profiling?
No. We're going to go.
Not when you're hanging on the border and they're coming from south to north. That can't be called profiling. Doesn't matter. And besides,
invasive species.
No, you're looking at a whole lot of people. You're looking at not only people from Mexico, but Guatemala, Honduras. You're also looking at people coming from other countries.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part, is the people who everybody knows how porous the southern border is.
John, it's national security at this point.
It
is.
Yeah, it is.
How much law enforcement endorsement have you received at this point?
I'm very pleased to have received endorsements from the correctional officers, over 15,000, I think it is, men and women that work in our state prisons.
Wow.
The Fraternal Order of Police statewide has endorsed me. The Arizona Conference of Police and Sheriffs, which is about 92 police and sheriff agencies throughout the state. That's called ASCOPS. And then we've got the Arizona Highway Patrolmen's Association. So almost all of the statewide law enforcement associations that represent the men and women that put their lives on the line for all the rest of us look back to the time when I was Senate President. And, there were a couple years when the budget was tight. I was president from 2003 to 2007. And, 2003 and 2004 were tough budget years. We were coming out of the economic downturn of Y2K and 9/11 and all of that. 2005 and 2006 got pretty healthy, and the budget, we had money.
We had a surplus at that point.
We had a surplus. That's when we built the rainy day fund back up to $1 billion. But that's also when we gave, I remember telling some of our state employees in 2003 and 2004, we're not going to be able to do much for you, but when we can, we will. And then they found out that I kept my word, and I did. So the biggest raises they had ever received was when I was Senate President, and they remember that. And they know that a Governor, Ken Bennett, will take care of the law enforcement men and women that protect the rest of us every day.
How about county endorsement? Lots
of elected officials, sheriffs and county supervisors and city council members and mayors. But I think I have to say that I'm proudest for those 4 statewide law enforcement agency endorsements, and probably Joey Strickland, the former director of the Arizona Department of Veteran Services.
Well, we'll give you one more you can be proud of. You now have a fishing group endorsing.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Go. Donuts and hot dog.
Okay, sounds good.
Throwing babies in the air.
All right.
All righty, we're going to stand down. When we come back, we're going to change gears for a few minutes, go to downtown San Diego. Yep, where the weather is always nice. Talk to Rick at H&M Landing and thank him for his contribution to the successful trip we had. I'm Don McDowell with
Special K,
Ken Bennett,
and Bill Ruley's in the house. Fishing junkie, really? Okay, I get it. All right, and we're back. Hey, we're going to go to San Diego at H&M Landing. Before he does it, 619-222-1144. Rick at the tackle shop. What's happening, man?
Well, you should know, man. You guys just got back. I heard you waxing pretty good.
We had a total of 353 fish on that boat. And I have to tell you, You know, I've been over there a lot of times, but just a plug for Captain Scott McDaniels. I have never met a nicer boat captain than Scott McDaniels. Very pleasant. Only guy that I've ever heard, when he gets on the bullhorn, giving instructions, making suggestions, which is kind of odd, he says, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And that whole persona kind of envelops the boat with he's got some young, very aggressive deckhands and crew members. And what an awesome trip. Excellent boat.
I'm glad you like it. I told you you'd be a little surprised by how nice everybody was on that.
You know, and those megabaits, it's the first time I've fished megabaits. That's pretty interesting.
Not bad, huh? Did you get a few on them?
I got a few, lost a few. Had some big hookups on some bruiser bluefin and a couple of yellowfin. But I'll tell you what, there was so much chaos on the back of that boat.
Yeah.
Is what I was telling John, and we have gubernatorial candidate Ken Bennett, our current Secretary of State, in house with us, and Patrick's here. You still got little wobblies going on today?
Only when I close my eyes.
Okay, well, keep your eyes open. But, yeah, it was good. And then the patty fishing, I went to swim baits on that, and it was stupid.
Yep, that's sure.
Good but we're looking at the overall numbers. What do you have to add on top of what the 80 did?
Just really good fishing on all the boats. All the boats had the same kind of trip.
Good.
Just whacking the tuna. The guys that are fishing the islands are just killing the yellowtail. They're catching it. They got 5 yesterday on the morning half-day boat. I mean, this is probably as good a fishing as I've ever seen in my lifetime. I've been doing this since about 1968.
Global warming, that's what's doing it.
Well,
it is.
I've seen El Niños before, too.
Let me ask you, on a conservation note, I've been reading and hearing and a lot of scuttlebutt on the Mexican government to control the bluefin tuna with the tuna pins.
Right.
What's actually going on?
You know what? There was a report put out by NOAA and the Pew Corporation, who are funded by Hewlett-Packard, who is one of the key proponents of PETA and all those guys. And they're trying to get us just completely stop fishing. So they fund these reports, and the Mexican government read this report that said that there's only, I think it was 40,000 bluefin over 50 pounds left in the Pacific. And they have to get up to about that size before they spawn. Well, they read this report, and it seemed very credible to them, and they believe it, and they stopped the fishing. Now, that's the party line on that.
Well, everybody's talking
about
the Mexican. No, Rick, the fishing cooperative is still fishing bluefin.
Oh, sure it is. Sure.
We can't, but they do.
Well, they have a little different deal going than we do.
And what's the, they were removing, we saw two or three tuna pins. Where were they moving those guys? Do you have any idea?
They just move into wherever water they want that seems the best for the conditions that they have. If the water's getting a little cold, they're going to move it to a warmer place. If it's getting off color, they're going to move it farther offshore to where the water's nice and blue. Because they got to be pretty careful with those fish to keep them in the right condition.
Well, it seemed to me, fishing at a bluefin pin was the thing to do.
Well,
it's kind of like hunting at a game reserve, John.
It can be very, very good. There's no doubt. A lot of those schools, they act like giant fish aggregating devices. They catch these schools of fish, and then they put them in the pens, and all the other bluefins swim around and said, hey, here's our buddies. Let's hang around here. And they all hang around here, and there's a lot of food getting thrown over the side, eating those fish in the pens, and they're like the big fish magnets. So they hang around together and then move away eventually. But when they're around, the fishing around can be very big, very good.
Well, we woke up day 2, and there were no less than 18 boats out there. It was looked like downtown Glendale at 4:00.
Oh yeah,
crazy.
Too bad that happens, but it doesn't surprise me.
Well, I want to thank you for your input and sharing the megabaits. That was interesting. I need to spend some more time developing exactly how to fish those. So.
Yeah, did you fish them on the slide like I recommended?
I did.
Yeah, they work pretty good that way.
Yeah, I left one over in a kelp patty, too.
Well, that happens.
Yeah.
The bad thing about those hooks that don't straighten out, right?
Yeah, boy. Yeah, well, he had some modified hooks on there, and you're not bending them.
No, they're not getting away. All right, buddy. I'm glad you guys had a great time.
We'll plan on seeing you in probably 2 weeks.
Terrific. All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
All right, check them out. 619-222-1144 HM Landing. Ask specifically for Scott McDaniels aboard the Sea Adventure 80. Okay, we need to take you fishing.
I'd love to go.
Good stuff. It is time well spent. It was kind of an eye opener. They still have the fuels charge, so when you pay your ticket, you buy your ticket to be on the boat. When you check in, you will pay for a California fishing license.
What's that run?
The two of them are $47. You get a Mexican permit, California permit. So there's $47. When you get on the boat, you're responsible for your snack and beverage tab. You're responsible for having your fish filleted, $5 for a tuna, $4 for a yellowtail.
$4 for a yellowtail?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I'd rather pay the $4 than make, $47 mess in the kitchen.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, because I still, they do a good job, but this afternoon will be spent taking the skins off and trimming and getting all the bones out, so you don't get one stuck in your throat, J.K.
I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So it's an ordeal, and then like anything else. You get over there. So we've got one place here, Phoenix Fishing Supply, 16th Street and Camelback. They're just Gowdy and his guys over there are just outstanding. I take all my reels and all my saltwater stuff over there. They pull the string off, restring them, and fix them up, get them lubricated, check the drags. But then when you get over to the landing, there was seemingly $166 worth of stuff that I had to have.
Of course.
Particular trip.
Of course.
Well, it wasn't just for me. I'm sharing with Patrick and
Donnie.
and my son Donnie, and all the rods and reels came home in one piece, and we're missing a few megabaits, and
I heard that you didn't have heavy enough line on.
I was too heavy.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How'd you lose the bluefin? You said they snapped off.
It was the scrambles in the back.
Oh, okay.
You'll have 20 guys back there, and you get 4 or 5 hookups. It's not uncommon, and we did. And you got fish going at 60
different
miles.
angles.
These are 65-mile-an-hour fish. When they get hooked, they're out of there. They don't want to come. They don't want to go for a boat ride.
Can't admit. See, ingrates.
I tell you.
And I'm pretty good about staying out of everybody's way. But if that fish, we're talking 35, 45 pound yellowfin, and if they want to go over to the port side of the boat and you're on the starboard side of the boat, there's no way you can keep up with it. It's chaos. And the deckhands were really good with working with certain anglers. You can look back there and see who knows what they're doing and who's going to need some help.
So when you say 25 guys on the back, how are you at least
shoulder to shoulder?
Is it shoulder or elbow
no.
or it's?
No, I mean you're up close and personal, and you have most all these guys were pretty good. The first day was a little iffy because you have to yell instructions. I'm going over. I'm coming under. We're wrapped, and if you're wrapped, here comes a deckhand trying to get these rods untangled and all this kind of thing, and you're standing there, and I'm with the first one. I just lost my mind because it was my first megabait fish. It was a good fish. Here comes Jason Dwight, Jimmy Dwight's son. Snap!
Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of suck it up, go in the wheelhouse, have a cup of coffee, come back out and do it again. Go.
You didn't kill anybody. So
yeah, did Jason return on the boat? You didn't throw him overboard.
Once they got him out of the water, it did pretty good. Yeah, and then you get we had an elderly gentleman that liked to play with the deck hose, and he and I had a chat. He filled my my left boot up full of water, And
what was he playing with it? Oh, washing it down?
I don't know. You know how old guys are. You know, he get bored.
Why did he? Ooh, that hurt, JK.
You're not. We are not where he is.
Okay.
Bless his heart. He just pick up the hose and start hosing down the deck. Not look out or anything, and I didn't know what he was doing, so he walks behind me, fills up one of my boots full of water. So the rest of the day I threw anchovies at him. It's all good.
Made him eat the anchovies.
Right. All righty, when we come back, we're going to talk to James Guggenauer up in Payson, like San Diego.
Where the weather's always nice.
I bet they got some blow last night.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. We'll be right back.
Morning's kind of damp. I'm not worried about cutting the grass. Left my truck at the boat ramp and my boat is full of gas. My old boss thinks I'm sick today. He won't have me to harass. 'Cause I'm out here on the river and he can kiss my big old bass. Kiss my bass.
All righty, that only means one thing. James Guggenauer from Rim Country Custom Rods in downtown Payson. James, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Don. Good morning, J.K. and Secretary Bennett.
Good morning, James. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
He's up in Payson. He should be doing well.
That's right.
Did you guys get a little bit of weather last night?
We did. We got a really nice monsoon rain last night and one right at sunrise this morning. It was just beautiful.
Nice.
I was in Prescott at a meet and greet at some people's house yesterday, and they had gotten 5.5 inches in 1 hour the night before.
Ooh.
They about got washed off the mountain. So.
Yep, it can definitely do that up there. That's for sure. Secretary Bennett, if I could just first of all thank you for being on the show and talking to us outdoor people today.
My pleasure.
As a rural Arizona, I like what I'm hearing. You earned my vote this morning when you said about an hour ago that we need to get more control of our forest and wildlife at the state level rather than at the federal level.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, James, which means that we've got to do the best job in the country at managing what we manage at the state level already so that we can then advocate in the courts or in the court of public opinion that the feds need to turn over more to our control locally, because local government is better government. I learned that on a city council, and I appreciate your comments there. Thanks.
Couldn't agree with you more. Hey, let me tell you what's going on in Rim Country here. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Tonto Basin Chamber of Commerce, we're having a meeting with Arizona Game and Fish to talk about how they plan to improve the fishing at Roosevelt Lake. This has been a series of ongoing meetings, and this should be a pretty important one. We're going to hear about some fundraising that was going on to buy some Florida strain bass that they plan to put in there. Also at this meeting, they're going to review the 2015 fishing regulations that they have proposed. So we're hoping for a good turnout. We wish all the listening audience to make your way up to Tonto Basin. That's at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
James, how many are we expecting? 80 to 100, you think? 60?
Well, I would hope that. We have a couple of things working against us here. There's a lot of winter visitors that go to Tonto Basin, and we don't have them at this meeting. But we have been averaging 50 to 60 people at the meeting, so 80 would be a great number for us. And like we've always said, the more people that attend these meetings, the more attention we get from Game and Fish.
It's their opportunity to comment, and it's their opportunity to be involved. That's the biggest thing that most people don't understand. The squeaky wheel does get the grease on occasions, and when you have a righteous issue such as what's going on there, that's when people take notice.
Absolutely right.
Who from the department has committed to come down? Any commissioners?
I have not heard back from Commissioner Madden. We specifically invited him because he has attended at each of the meetings that we've had so far, but I have not heard a reply. But they are all welcome by all means.
Okay, good. All right, what's happening on the Mother Lake?
Hey, fishing was called good this past week by our local anglers. Now, the bass are clearly in a summer pattern, and we're getting good reports of an early morning bite and a late afternoon to evening bite. The one good news was that due to the runoff that we're getting because of the monsoon rains, the lake remained constant this past week at the water level at 41%. So even though there continues to be a lot of water taken out of the lake for downstream use, the monsoons replenished it this week. The bad part is as soon as the monsoons slow, you can see the flow into the lake decrease accordingly. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can keep the monsoons going for a while here.
Well, I think the key to the success of keeping that golden alga at bay is keeping it 40 cent or above, hopefully.
Well, you're absolutely right, Don. That is everybody's fear that we're going to have a blow up of algae, and I mean that is really has a large impact on a lot of fish in a hurry. So hopefully with the running water and at least being stable at the level, we can avoid that this summer.
One can only hope. How about the trout lake and some of the crappie activity?
Hey, I talked to Kurt Rambo, who is a crappie guide, long-time crappie guide on Roosevelt Lake. I was fishing on Monday. He comes driving up to me, said that his average has increased to 20 crappie a day.
Nice.
But here's what Kurt does. He looks on his graph. He gets right over a brush or a log or a ledge or something like that, because he says that the crappie schools are very close to structure. And his term exactly was they're not near the bush, they're not on top of the bush, they are in the bush. So he uses a bait called a little fishy, which is a minnow imitation about 1 inch long, and he puts it on a 4-pound test line on an ultralight rod, and he can literally drop that bait into the bush.
Wow.
So, he said just move from bush to bush, and they're there, but very tight to the structure. The trout fishing up on the Rim Lakes has just been great this year. A lot of stocking by Arizona Game and Fish. I can't say enough for what those guys are doing. The baits that are working were power baits, worms, and a woolly bugger fly for our fly fishermen. JK, I specifically asked about a Z-ray this week, and I did not get a good report on a Z-ray, but a very similar bait is called a super duper.
Yep.
I did say that they were catching them on super dupers. So,
that's old school versus new school.
It is not.
Come on.
I want to say that, Don, but thank you.
Yeah. Okay, James. We know, don't we?
Hey, you can check out all the stocking on the lakes up there at Arizona Game and Fish website. You can see exactly which lakes are being stocked and with how many. And then the other thing was we hear that the best bite are just before daylight and just after sunset. And I was talking to Dennis Perch about that earlier, and he said, that's not strange that happens, because when these fish are raised at the hatchery, those are exactly the times that they feed them in the hatchery.
Perfect.
But when they put them in the lake, they kind of do what they've learned to do.
Yep, kind of like at my house. Same thing. Yeah, and for lunch you're on your own.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What else you got going, buddy?
Hey, just some tips that we heard on Roosevelt Lake for bass fishing. The Carolina rig using a lizard was the most successful technique and bait that was reported this past week, followed by a drop shot using a 6-inch worm. Those two techniques around a main lake point, this is summertime pattern, so they're always going to be in 15 to 25 feet of water off a main lake point. Now, I did get one report of a guy who was using a spoon on some suspended school of bass in 30 to 40 feet of water. This is typically a very late summer or fall kind of pattern, but as those fish start to move off away from structure and out into deep water, the wildlife knows long before us when the season's about to change, and I think these fish are starting to feel that already.
Yeah. We'll talk. I'll bring one of those mega baits over to Tonto for the meeting tomorrow. I think there's an opportunity to use those. James, it's like a spoon. jigging spoon. Doesn't have any curvature to it. It's got a ridge down. It's flat with a apex on both sides, and it's tapered off. Gets a little action in the water, but I'm thinking, okay, if you're not catching yellowtail with it or tunas, there may be an opportunity to catch deep water largemouth.
Hey, I'm with you, Don.
Yeah, and is that pretty much your report for the week?
Yeah.
Now, okay, I want to thank you, James. I took that 7-foot rod, and I was a little leery at first to throw it into a yellowtail bite, but I want to tell you what, we've got that rod on film, and the parabolic curve in the backbone on that 7-footer was just absolutely superb.
You know, I so much like hearing inputs like that from experienced fishermen. To a custom rod builder, you know, it doesn't get any better than that. So thank you,
James. No, thank you. And I have to tell you, you know, you need to look at the film and see this rod performing. The first yellowtail, I said, well, you know what, we're going to see if this thing's going to hold up or not, and I tightened up my line, reared back on it, and was amazed. That little tip just wore that yellowtail out, and bounced him up over the rail. Hoorah!
Excellent. Glad to hear that, Don.
Great stuff. Hey, man, have a better rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow at Tonto Basin, 6 p.m. at the Gila County Anglers Roundtable.
Thank you, sir.
James, this is Ken. Thanks for your support. Spread the word up there in Payson.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're going to get this thing wrapped up. Ken, I want to thank you most certainly.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. I'm glad we ran into each other over at that Veterans event in, where was it? Glendale, Peoria?
28th Avenue and Cactus, north of Cactus.
Yeah.
At the,
Heidi Chapp put that together, I think.
Yeah.
And
Brass Armadillo.
Yeah.
And in the event that the things turn out well in the electoral process and that you do become governor, I think you can always look back and say, hey, you know, if I have any natural resources questions, maybe we can talk to those two morons down at Shake, Rattle, and
I think
yeah, boy.
You got it.
3.
You got it.
He's half. He's
okay.
the halfway.
2.5?
No. 9.
2.5 men.
No, it's been a great couple hours this morning. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you know, you're welcome here anytime. You know, I believe what you believe, and we'll certainly kick in there and actively support your efforts to become our next governor.
Well, spread the word. You know, I'm running under this Clean Elections program, which means that I collected a whole bunch of $5 contributions from just regular Arizonans. I'm not a wealthy individual, and I'm not tied into the big money, the big PACs, and all this stuff. You know, one of my opponents will probably spend $5 or $6 million in this race. Another $2 or $3 million. I had $750,000, so $750,000. People haven't seen us on TV much.
That may be a good thing. Well, nobody can criticize anything that you haven't done.
But we just cut a commercial the other day with lots of those law enforcement endorsement, those good organizations standing behind me and talking about how we're going to take care of them. And they take
Where's
care
Arpaio in the mix?
You know, he's not taking a position in the governor's race, and so I don't expect to have that endorsement. I don't expect that anyone else will either, but
he's a smart prairie dog. Every time he sticks his head out of the hole, whack.
Yeah, he sure does tend to get shot at a lot. But I mean, I happen to do a lot of business down in Washington and Central, and he's been protested for the better part of the last 10 years. Yeah. Every day, people are out there with bullhorns and parading, and nothing changes. He's still there.
Yeah. So people can go to our website at BennettArizona.com. Bennett has 2 N's, 2 T's, and Arizona is fully spelled out. It's got a very detailed plan about everything that we are talking about. The main thing, you know, the motto of the campaign is people, not politics. And again, it kind of comes back to that experience that I talked about. 30 years in business, 24 years running our family fuel and oil distribution company up in the Prescott area. since I had to move down here as Secretary of State, the last 6 years I've been on the board of directors for the Cancer Treatment Center of America Hospital out in Goodyear.
That I did not know.
Yeah. I knew that one.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So 24 years in selling gasoline and diesel fuel and energy, and then 6 years trying to help people get over cancer and cure that. So, I've had 30 great years in business, but then during that same time, almost 25 years in public service. And the two that kind of stand out in my mind is that local government, 4 years on the Prescott City Council. It's very important, I think, that our statewide leaders, especially the governor, understands how rural and local government works, because unfortunately in the last 5 or 6 years, the state has taken about $800 million of monies that should have been going out to our local towns and communities to maintain roads, and monies that should have been going into natural resources and hunting and fishing. All of those monies have been being swept for the last several years, and that's not the way the state should run its business. We've got to, if we collect fees and permit fees and all those things to keep our natural resources and hunting and fishing activities strong in Arizona, those money should go for those things. They shouldn't be swept in to balance the state's general fund. So
we've always felt that, but I've watched, the state parks is a very good example. Could never function on their own dollar. They always had to sweep the funds from the OHV fund to make sure that they paid for their employees. And that's the issue there is if people don't use the state parks, you have to close them. Great. It's a natural asset. Maybe you just maintain it. You don't let people in if nobody's utilizing it or paying for it. But you don't want to sweep the funds that are available for one project, pay for another. I get it exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and then the other experience I think I hope stands out is that 8 years in the legislature and 4 years as Senate President.
Absolutely. That's got to be a huge bonus.
Sometimes on the campaign trail, and I'll tell it right now because, I think it's powerful. It's a little bit personal. Apologize for that, but it illustrates why experience matters. I have two little grandsons, 2 and 4-year-old boys. And the 2-year-old was born with some pretty serious health issues, but he's doing all right. A few months ago, the doctors came to our son and his wife and said, we think Tanner ought to have some surgeries, but we normally don't recommend them for 2-year-olds. And so Ryan and Kim had a tough decision to make. Do they go forward with the surgery that even the doctors are saying they don't normally recommend? And after a lot of prayer and thought, they decided to go ahead and have the surgery. And they got to meet the surgeon that was going to operate on their 2-year-old boy. The first question they had for their surgeon, how many of these surgeries have you done before?
Yeah, boy.
Because when somebody's cutting on your little boy, you don't want it to be their first shot.
No.
And the state, we're at some critical but exciting times in Arizona. We need leadership that has experience in the private sector, experience at local government level, and experience in the legislature. And
conveniently, we have somebody next to us who qualifies.
Nice.
Most of the people in the race have had some private sector experience, some type of a business experience. I've had 30 years. A couple of us have had local experience. There's a mayor running and whatever. But only one of the 6 has been in the legislature and had legislative leadership experience. And when you have to do that and you have to bring people together and get things done and cut through the BS and know where the bones are buried and the bodies were piled up.
And all the 8x10 glossies are hanging. Yeah. Well, working with the legislature, when somebody once refined it as, herding cats.
Herding cats, yeah.
And that's probably the most appropriate description I've ever heard.
Perfect.
So that's what I offer, and that's what I bring. And
one final question: as Secretary of State, what do you feel like your most crucial accomplishment has been?
As Secretary, I have to point actually to that World War II memorial. We had a great 3 years putting that memorial together. That's really not an official function of the Secretary of State, but we honored 1,972 Arizonans who were killed in World War II, and their names individually hang on a 2-inch by 12-inch stainless steel nameplate, hanging on 9 blue steel pillars between the gun barrels from the Arizona and the Missouri. It's a moving and passionate tribute to the men and women from Arizona who lost their lives in World War II. And if you ever have a chance, go down to Wesley Boland Memorial Plaza and see that. Besides that, as far as the official duties of Secretary of State, it's probably working to protect our election systems, to make sure that only American citizens are allowed to register to vote, that people, are having to show ID to vote, all of the things that I think are important about protecting our elections. A lot of our elections are won by just a few votes.
Oh, yeah.
And that vote is sacred, and if somebody else is voting when they shouldn't be, they're canceling out one of us.
We've got another situation on the vet side. My hat's off to you for that World War II memorial. But so far, I think we're up to 100, almost 200 soldiers lost in battle from Desert Storm current day. Mm-hmm. And it's all we can do to see on a Thursday the Capitol flag flown at half staff, and I just think there's something. We work hard to support our soldiers coming back, and in the event of a demise soldier, it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, I had a brother-in-law serve in Iraq, and we're glad that he came home, but I know that others didn't. Had to pay a much greater price. And so as governor, I will make sure that we honor our veterans, past and present, and do everything we can to make sure that they get the honor, respect, and support and benefits that they deserve.
Well, once again, God love you. Best of luck to you. We'll support you as best and as aggressively as we can. We'll go with James, and be sure to call James. Yeah. Not one of the nicest guys you'll want to meet. Very connected up in the North Woods country, and we'll certainly do what we can. You can go to ShakeRattleAndTroll.com if you don't know who your district and senator and leaders are. There's a click on. We'll put your information up.
Thank you.
Check out the stuff at HMLanding.com. He's got his picture up, his picture of the week.
I figured he would. Yeah. I just absolutely figured he would. You guys are driving me nuts. I'm glad you had a good time.
He's using my rods, my reels, and he gets picture of the week. Really?
No.
All righty. Hey, that's it. Take a real hard look at Ken Bennett. My opinion, great guy. I think he'll make a great next governor. We need it. I'm Don McDowell.
Special K.
Ken Bennett.
Patrick Tuna Fish McDowell.
Wow.
Help us, Lord, help us.
Amen. Well, at least he wasn't using Oscar Mayer products.